Hey guys, tonight we slip back through time, way back, to a gritty, grimy little port town you think you know but absolutely are not ready for. Colonial Boston, 1700s. The moment you arrive, it hits you. Not the charm, not the cobblestones, no, the smell. The harbor assaults your nostrils with a bouquet of dead fish, sewage, and something suspiciously horsey. You squint through a yellowish fog. That's not smog. It's chimney soot and wood smoke mixed with sea mist. You look down. The ground isn't dirt exactly, but something worse. Muddy, greasy slop full of who knows. And sorry to say, you probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Tell me where you're listening from, and what time it is in your part of the world. Now ease back. Maybe crack a window for that cool breeze or wrap yourself in your softest blanket. Let the dark settle around you. Take a breath and follow me back. You step off the ship, if you can call that creaking wooden beast a ship, and your boots land in a puddle that should not be warm. A gull shrieks overhead like it's warning you. Go back. Go home. But it's too late. You're in it now. Colonial Boston. Population, judgmental. Let's start with the people. They see you, and not in a friendly, welcome stranger kind of way. More like, what are you? Suspicion laces their glances. A man hauling a barrel eyes your shoes. A woman with a bonnet grabs her child's arm and hustles away. And the worst part? You haven't even said a word yet. The docks are chaos. Sailors unloading crates with tobacco-stained teeth. Slaves being herded like livestock. Yes, even in New England. Boston profited plenty from the trade. Fishmongers screaming prices, pigs roaming freely, and every so often, a red-faced constable barking orders no one seems to follow. You sidestep a donkey and nearly walk into a man peeing against a post. He doesn't flinch, just nods and keeps going. You try to look casual, blend in, but every step you take screams outsider. And not just because of your clothing, we'll get to that in the next section. It's your whole vibe. Your posture, your healthy teeth, your lack of lice. Boston in the early 1700s isn't a postcard town. It's loud, cramped, and crawling with contradictions. You've got Puritans muttering prayers while smugglers bribe officials 2 doors down. Children play in the street until a horse-drawn cart barrels through, and then they scatter like startled hens. And speaking of hens, they're everywhere, pecking at garbage, roosting on barrels. One stares you down with the eyes of a creature who's seen things. Your first real problem isn't the muck or the smell or even the rats, which you will meet later. Trust me, it's the cold. It's bone deep and wet, the kind of chill that crawls into your ears and makes a home. You didn't pack for this. You shiver so hard your knees knock. A boy selling firewood smirks at you. You'd buy some if you had any colonial money. Spoiler alert, your Visa card is useless here. You think, maybe I'll find an inn. Maybe someone will take pity on me. But Boston inns aren't like modern hotels with clean sheets and mints on pillows. They're overcrowded rooms above taverns, filled with drunk sailors, fleas, and snoring that rattles the floorboards. Still, you try. You wander toward what looks like a public house and open the door to a wave of heat, pipe smoke, and BO. A man immediately bumps your shoulder, spilling something sticky down your front. You flinch, say sorry, and just like that, you've made a mistake. Because here's the thing, your accent doesn't match anyone's. Not English noble, not Irish servant, not even backwoods colonial. You're unplaceable, which in this town is dangerous. Where you from? Someone slurs. You freeze. Think fast. Say nothing. Another voice. He one of them Dutchman? No, look at his teeth. Too straight. The bar goes quiet. A few chuckles. Someone coughs. You back out before they decide you're either a spy or a demon. Back on the street, you realize something unsettling. There's no safe place here. You're foreign in every possible way. There's no Google Translate, no Uber to escape in, no one offering you a charger or a map. Just people who live by rhythms you don't understand, and they can spot a wrong note. You hear church bells. The sound is thin and metallic, nothing like the rich peals you're used to in movies, but it's loud. Everyone in the square seems to pause briefly. Some tip their hats. Others grumble and keep walking. And now, a little historical fact to chew on while your feet go numb. In 1700, Boston was the third largest British colonial city after London and Bristol. That's right, bigger than New York or Philadelphia at the time. But don't picture a bustling metropolis. Picture a huddle of wood-frame buildings surrounded by wilderness and salty water. Picture rules carved by people who believed they were God's chosen, and punishment meted out with no sense of irony. Historians still argue whether early Bostonians were more afraid of external threats, like the French and Native Americans, or internal ones like witches, heretics, or people who laughed during sermons. The fear was constant either way, and fear makes people twitchy. You, my friend, are very twitchy right now. You pass a house where a woman's hanging laundry in the freezing air. The clothes are stiff as bark. She doesn't look at you, just keeps working. You realize no one here lingers. Everyone has tasks, chores, roles. Idleness is suspicious. So is cleanliness. And you have none of these things. You're idle, you're clean for now, and you're looking around like you lost your phone, which, let's be real, would be your first move if this were a simulation. You finally duck into an alley to gather yourself. You're trying to process the sensory overload. The smells, so many smells, the noise, the unblinking glares. You reach into your pocket out of habit and pull out a granola bar. Before you can unwrap it, a small hand snatches it. Kid, 8, maybe 9. She sprints away and disappears. You sigh. Another mistake. Food is survival here, not a snack. You can't blame her, but you do feel a little hollow now, literally and emotionally. And here comes your fringe tidbit. In 1702, a Boston woman was fined for wearing too much silk. Her clothes were too nice, which offended the sensibilities of her Puritan neighbors. Because here, virtue isn't just about what you do. It's what you wear, how you speak, even how much you smile. Fun is borderline suspicious. You sit on a cold stone step and try to breathe through your mouth. Big mistake. The air is no better in there. Someone passes and mutters something about God's wrath. You wonder if it's about you. A rooster crows. It's not morning. No one reacts. Somewhere nearby, a hammer strikes metal. Over and over. A blacksmith. You think of warmth, of sparks, of hiding there. But then again, what would you say? What would you do? Because that's the real kicker, isn't it? You don't have a skill. Not a usable one. No farming. No baking. No carpentry. No trade. In colonial Boston, your modern resume might as well be blank parchment. If you can't make, mend, grow, or sell something, you're dead weight. And in this city, dead weight doesn't last long. You're immediately dressed all wrong. It hits you the second someone laughs behind you. This high, nasal snicker that makes your ears burn. You turn, and a pair of teenage boys are pointing. One is chewing on a strip of dried meat. The other just says, "Nice britches, stranger." Except you're not wearing britches. You're wearing jeans. And that, apparently, is a problem. In colonial Boston, clothing isn't just fabric. It's social code, morality badge, class indicator, religious statement, and you're screaming all the wrong things. Your hoodie looks like some kind of shapeless wizard's robe. Your t-shirt might as well be a sorcerer's sigil. Your shoes, they don't have buckles. That alone is offensive. You shuffle down the street, trying to blend into the chaos. Good luck. You look like a poorly disguised time traveler at a Renaissance fair. And here's the twist. Boston in the 1700s wasn't as drab as you imagine. Sure, Puritans wore a lot of black and gray, but by 1700, colonists had a bit more flair. Deep reds, earthy greens, mustard yellows. If you had money or connections, color was fair game. That said, silk and lace? Dangerous territory. A little too flashy and suddenly you're inviting sin. It's a tightrope of taste and morality. Too plain and you're a beggar. Too nice and you're a threat to public virtue. And you, dear listener, with your brand logos and zippers, are absolutely horrifying. A woman in a long patched dress gives your sneakers the stink eye. Her bonnet frames a face that's been permanently squinting against suspicion. She makes the sign of the cross. Wrong coast for that, but the message is clear. You're marked. And now comes the real fun. You pass a group of men unloading barrels of molasses, a sticky backbone of the Boston economy, and one stops mid-haul to stare at your jacket. Is that leather? He asks. You panic. Sort of faux leather. Like synthetic. He blinks. Sin they what? You try, stupidly, to explain vegan fashion in the language of the Enlightenment. It does not go well. Devil's work, someone mutters. Okay, time to walk faster. But now you've attracted more attention. Two girls with ribboned caps whisper to each other and point. One giggles. You think she's maybe your age or close, at least in colonial years. But she's clearly never seen a zipper before. You tug it higher, nervously, and that makes it worse. It moves. Her eyes go wide. The whispering intensifies. You pass a wooden sign swaying above a storefront. Tailor and clothier. A bell above the door jangles as a man in a plum waistcoat steps out. He pauses, scans you, smirks. Odd cut, that, he says, gesturing vaguely at your outfit. Is it Turkish? You try to laugh it off. No, just Target. He frowns. You were targeted? Oh no. No. You back away, tripping over a loose cobblestone. Your foot splashes into a puddle that might contain every disease known to man and several unknown to science. Your sock absorbs it like a sponge. Gross doesn't cover it. And now here comes our mainstream historical fact. In 1705, Massachusetts passed a law banning excessive dress. That meant only people of a certain wealth or status could wear lace, silk, or silver embroidery. And people checked. Neighbors tattled. Constables enforced it. Fashion policing wasn't metaphorical, it was literal. Historians still argue whether these sumptuary laws were about preserving religious humility or maintaining rigid social control. Probably both. Either way, your outfit has officially made you someone to monitor. You spot a group of boys your size carrying firewood. They wear rough linen shirts, coarse wool breeches, and heavy knit stockings. Their hands are cracked and red from cold. They're not laughing, but they are staring. One calls out, "Where's your cap, fool?" You reach up instinctively. No hat. This is an even bigger problem than it sounds. In this era, everyone wears something on their head: hats, caps, kerchiefs. It's a social marker, sure, but also hygiene. Lice are rampant, and hats help hide the scratching. Bareheaded? It's either scandalous or pathetic. Either way, it makes you vulnerable. You duck into an alley, heart pounding. You need to change. Disguise. Hide. There's a laundry line nearby, strung between a shed and a crooked fence. Socks, petticoats, breeches, and yes, a threadbare linen shirt hang flapping in the wind. You hesitate. This feels like theft. Then again, you're already being followed by suspicion like a loyal dog. May as well lean in. You snatch a shirt and wrap it around your waist like a skirt, just to hide the denim. Pull a cap down off the line and jam it onto your head. It smells like smoke and cabbage. Congratulations. You've downgraded from demonic to confused beggar. You emerge onto the street again and immediately trip over a hog. Yes, a literal pig, just waddling down the road like it owns the place. And honestly, kind of does. Pigs in 1700s Boston are practically citizens. Allowed to roam, snuffle, and root through garbage piles. They're both sanitation workers and meat on hoof. People recognize them, sometimes name them. There's even anecdotal evidence of pigs following milkmaids like loyal golden retrievers. Quirky enough for you? The pig grunts and continues on its way. You mutter an apology. It ignores you. Suddenly, someone grabs your shoulder. Hard. You spin, startled. It's a town constable in a dark blue coat with a battered tricorn hat. He looks you up and down, nostrils flaring. "What are you meant to be?" he growls. You stammer something about being lost. Don't recognize your accent, nor your station. Are you a servant? A seaman? Speak. You blurt out, I'm an apprentice tailor. It's the first trade that comes to mind. He squints. Where's your master? Sick. With scrofula. He grunts. Acceptable lie. Gross enough to be true. Then mind your place. No wandering. You look like a bloody Frenchman. The insult hangs in the air. Being mistaken for French? That's bad. Tensions are high with New France. Just 2 years earlier, English colonists were embroiled in Queen Anne's War, a transatlantic mess involving French forces and native allies. Suspicion of French spies is very real. You nod, eyes wide. The constable walks off, muttering about foreign devils and soft shoes. You sag against a wall. Your armpits are sweaty despite the cold. Your socks squish. And the final indignity? A little girl tugs at her mother's hand as you pass and whispers, "Mama, why's that man wearing breeches like a skirt?" You can't win. As you walk on, you catch your reflection in a window pane. The distorted glass shows a hunched, grimy figure wearing mismatched rags and a look of pure existential dread. Welcome to the fashion scene of Colonial Boston. It's judgmental, uncomfortable, and potentially criminal. And now you're gonna try to eat something. You're starving. Not, ooh, I could go for a snack hungry. No, this is the kind of hunger that makes your stomach twist like a wet rag and your brain whisper strange thoughts, like whether rats are technically meat. You'd give anything for a breakfast sandwich, or cereal, or even just a sad granola bar, which, if you recall, was stolen by a surprisingly fast child. You wander toward the center of town, guided by scent, or something close to scent. Smoke, yeast, fish, and sweat all mix in the cold air, teasing you with the promise of something edible. It's hard to overstate how alien the colonial Boston foodscape is. There are no restaurants, no bakeries with inviting windows, no signs listing specials. Food is fuel here. Cooking is an act of endurance. And you've never even lit a fire without a microwave starter pack. Eventually, you find yourself at a street market. A loose gathering of stalls and wagons, more mud than street. Farmers unload turnips and beets. Fishermen hack open cod. Someone's roasting chestnuts, which actually smell amazing. You make a beeline for that, only to stop when the vendor glares at you and growls, "You buy in or look in?" Here's your problem. You still don't have colonial currency. The Spanish dollar and British shilling are the most common, but barter is still king. Tobacco, labor, even animal fat that gets you fed. You, with your linty hoodie pockets and digital age uselessness, have nothing to offer. The vendor scowls. "What are ye? Soft in the head?" You back away, hands up, muttering thanks you don't mean. You spot a tavern across the square. The sign swinging overhead reads, "The Bleeding Knuckle." Sounds charming. You limp inside. It's dark, loud. The air is a broth of smoke, ale, and centuries of damp wood. A man plays a fiddle with more spirit than accuracy. A dog with one eye growls from under a table. You find a spot near the hearth and sit, trying to seem invisible. A barmaid, apron stained with everything imaginable, grunts in your direction. "What'll it be?" You freeze. Food," she snorts. You don't say, "Got coin." You shake your head. Then you got two choices, beg or work. Before you can respond, she shoves a tray at you. "Deliver these to table 3. You blink. "Seriously?" She just walks away. "Congratulations. You're now a colonial busboy." You shuffle between tables with a tray full of pottage and hard bread, dodging elbows and curses. The food smells decent, like stew with actual seasoning. You get it to table 3 without dropping anything, which feels like a personal victory. One man eyes you suspiciously. "You knew." You nod. "Just arrived." He grunts. "From where?" South. "Weymouth." "Sure." The lie hangs there like smoke. He doesn't challenge it, just digs into his pottage. Back in the kitchen, the barmaid thrusts a wooden bowl at you. "Payment." It's mostly liquid, flecked with what might be carrot or might be beetle. You don't care. You slurp it down in 3 bites, burning your tongue. The bread is like chewing driftwood. Still, it's something. Now for your mainstream historical fact. In early 1700s Boston, most people ate a variation of the same meal over and over: bread, beans, salt pork, and pottage, a thick stew that could contain vegetables, meat, or grains depending on the day. Breakfast was often cold leftovers or porridge. Variety, that was for the wealthy or smugglers with spice access. You manage a weak thank you to the barmaid. She shrugs. Don't say I never fed the poor. You step back outside into the sharp wind, stomach no longer clawing at itself. Progress. And now, for a fringe tidbit you wish you didn't know. The term spider in colonial kitchens didn't mean the insect. It referred to a three-legged iron skillet used for cooking over open flames. But don't worry, the actual spiders were also very much present. In pantries, barrels, flour sacks, and bread crusts. You wander toward the harbor, where the smell of fish becomes aggressively specific. You watch as a boy guts a cod the size of a suitcase. Gulls scream above him, wings flashing. A man stands nearby, boiling something in a black pot. You edge closer. He gives you a side glance. Chowder, he says. Clam, cod, some onion. You want. You shake your head. Your stomach wants it, sure, but your soul says maybe not street cauldron stew. Still, it's a chance to ask something. How do you get food if you don't have money? He snorts. You work simple as you fish, farm, haul, stitch, chop, bleed. You nod like that makes perfect sense. Historians still argue whether food security in early Boston was better than in England at the time. On one hand, the land was more plentiful. On the other, colonial winters were brutal, and imports weren't always reliable. In bad seasons, people starved or ate truly desperate things. You sit on a crate and watch as a girl hauls a basket of eels toward the market. Eels, that's dinner. As you sit there digesting pottage and poor decisions, a man leans against the post beside you. He smells like brine and sweat, and his face is a map of old injuries. You a runaway? He asks casually. No. Indentured. Nope. He squints. Then what are you? You don't know how to answer. He laughs. You'll figure it out. Or you won't. Either way, best get used to being hungry. Cities full of mouths and short on mercy. You nod. Thanks. Don't thank me. He walks off, whistling something off-key. You watch him go, your belly just full enough to keep you standing. And just as you stand to leave, someone walks past eating an apple. Perfect, crisp red apple. You follow the scent like a cartoon dog. The apple is gone. One moment, it's glinting in the sunlight like a polished jewel. The next, it's a wet crunch in someone else's mouth. You stand there, stunned, watching juice dribble down their chin. It's like seeing someone eat an iPhone, not because it's sacred or high-tech, but because it feels impossibly rare. Fresh fruit in colonial Boston? Not a year-round treat. This place runs on seasonality like it's a religion. Apples show up in fall, maybe winter if sellers are cool and rats are lazy. But mid-spring? That's suspicious. You trail the apple eater for a few steps, but he vanishes down a side alley, tossing the core into a chicken coop. A chicken hops over and pecks at it, glaring at you like you missed your chance. And now that you're paying attention, you realize something. This entire town is alive. Not bustling marketplace alive, literally alive. Pigs snuffle at garbage piles. Chickens cluck and flap in the mud. Dogs weave through crowds, thieving bread. Cats perch on barrels, twitching at rats the size of kittens. Even the horses seem half feral, stomping and snorting like they've got grudges. You, meanwhile, are very much the outsider. You don't belong in this food chain or social structure, and people can smell it on you like unfamiliar soap. Time to earn some social capital. You head toward a cluster of women carrying baskets. They're chatting in low tones, bundled in wool cloaks, and you can tell by the confident way they move that they run this part of town. One of them breaks off to shoo a goat from someone's doorstep. "Excuse me," you say carefully. "Is there work?" She eyes you. "You strong?" You shrug. "Medium." Another woman chuckles. "He's a soft-handed one. I can carry things." She tilts her head. "Can you churn butter?" You hesitate. "I could learn." Wrong answer. Another woman says, "Take him to Widow Haskell. Her boys are useless and her fence fell." Just like that, you're passed like a hot potato to Widow Haskell, who is somehow both bent with age and stronger than you. She hands you a shovel and points to a pile of soil and broken boards. "Dig out the rotten posts. Try not to die." You nod. Great. You are not great. You've never worked this hard in your life. Your hands develop blisters within minutes. You inhale dust, splinters, and what may be mold. Your hoodie is a sweat sponge. You're wheezing like an accordion. Meanwhile, Widow Haskell is hammering boards like Thor. You from the West Indies? She asks, not even looking up. No, South Boston. She squints at you, too pale for a sailor, too clumsy for a thief. Thanks. She hands you a tin mug of cider, sour, fermented, and weirdly strong. It hits you like warm regret, but it also clears your brain fog. A little. Now here's our mainstream historical fact. Boston's population in the early 1700s was booming, doubling roughly every 20 years. Immigrants arrived constantly. English, Irish, Scots, enslaved Africans, and indentured servants. Labor was everywhere, but so was class division. If you weren't someone with land or trade, you were someone doing labor for someone who did. You finish the fence. It leans like a drunken sailor, but it stands. Widow Haskell grunts in approval. Take this, she says, tossing you a small bundle. Inside, half a loaf of rye bread and a hunk of cheese. You could cry. The bread is dry but hearty. The cheese tastes like someone stored it next to sweaty socks, but you devour it like a royal banquet. Your fingers are cracked. Your back is stiff. But there's something oddly satisfying about honest toil. That is, until your stomach does a small cartwheel. Oh, you excuse yourself and hobble around the side of the house. No toilets, remember? Just a wooden seat over a dark, stinking pit. The outhouse is terrifying. It leans at an angle. Something moves under the seat. You suddenly understand why constipation was once considered a blessing. Afterward, you return to town and collapse onto the stone steps of the meeting house. That cheese is fighting back. Hard. And now for a fringe tidbit. The colonists didn't just ferment cider and ale. They fermented nearly everything. Molasses beer, spruce beer, even eel-based tonics were considered medicinal. Fresh water wasn't always safe, so alcohol was seen as cleaner. That's right, booze was the healthy option. You sit there, rubbing your temples, when a man in fine boots steps over you. He sneers. Out of the way, vagrant. You mumble an apology and he's gone. But something about him sticks with you. His walk, his coat, his authority. You start to notice the patterns. Who walks confidently, who steps aside, who wears wigs, short ones for everyday business, long powdered monstrosities for court and ceremony, who tips their hats, who doesn't. Boston is a hierarchy in motion. You, so far, are sub-basement level. Historians still argue whether Boston's class structure was more rigid than England's. In theory, the colonies were a meritocracy you could rise through work. In practice, birth, land, and religion still ruled. You pass a boy selling roasted apples, which turn out to be shriveled things cooked on a dirty iron grate. You buy one with your labor-earned bread crust. It burns your mouth, but it tastes real. You're finally starting to understand. Food isn't just survival here. It's barter, it's power, it's identity. And just as you're starting to piece it together, a bell rings in the distance. Not a church bell, a warning. You freeze. People begin to murmur. A voice calls out, "Fire! Dockside!" Suddenly the square erupts. Buckets are grabbed, barrels overturned, horses neigh in panic. And without thinking, you're running with the crowd towards smoke curling above the rooftops. Because in colonial Boston, a fire doesn't stay a fire. It becomes the whole town's problem. You sprint, or more accurately, you try to sprint, but your legs are half rubber from that fence repair job, and the cobblestones under your feet are unforgiving. You nearly eat stone twice before catching yourself on a passing cart. Smoke is rising thick and fast from the direction of the harbor. Black coils writhe into the sky, and every single person around you is moving like they've trained for this exact nightmare. Spoiler, they have. Colonial Boston isn't built for fire safety. Everything is wood. The houses, the shops, the barns, even the sidewalks are planks. Roofs are thatch and tarred shingles. Add open hearths, candles, and not very careful people, and you've got a recipe for citywide barbecuing. No hydrants, no official fire department, just people, buckets, and hope. You arrive at the edge of the chaos, lungs burning, heart hammering. A warehouse near the docks is engulfed. Flames lick the sky. Sparks rain down like fireflies on overdrive. The smell hits you like a door. Salt, smoke, something oddly sweet, and burning rope. A man thrusts a wooden bucket into your hands. "You," he shouts, "form a line. No asking, no checking if you're trained or willing. Just go." You're now a gear in Boston's human bucket machine. The chain stretches from the harbor to the fire. Water is hauled up in leather buckets, passed hand to hand, dumped on flames or the nearest unlucky timber. It's brutally inefficient, but it's all they've got. You fall into line, trading buckets with a wiry girl who might be 10 years old and definitely has a stronger grip than you. Each pass stings your raw palms. The water sloshes out before it even reaches its target. You're soaked, soot-covered, coughing, and not helping much. Every few minutes, someone yells, "Shift left," and the whole line shuffles sideways like a game of Colonial Tetris. You learn fast. Keep your head down, pass fast, don't drop the bucket. Because when you do, and you do, a man with a soot-black face screams, "Are ye blind, fool?" Oops. Mainstream historical fact time. Boston's first organized fire company wouldn't be formed until 1711, in response to, you guessed it, a catastrophic fire. Before that, firefighting was a community free-for-all. Every man, woman, and child who could lift a bucket was expected to help. Cities even kept designated fire hooks to pull down buildings in fire's path to stop the spread. Harsh but effective. Someone's shouting for a hook crew now. You spot them charging toward a nearby shed with ropes and iron claws. The plan? Tear the building down before it catches. It's crude firebreak theory, and you watch with wide eyes as they lash ropes to the structure, haul, and literally rip the place apart. You suddenly feel like you're in an action movie directed by a particularly angry carpenter. And here comes a quirky tidbit. In the 1700s, Boston households were required by law to keep at least one ladder and 2 leather fire buckets on hand at all times. Not for their own safety, oh no, for the city's protection. No bucket? Big fine. Your whole job was to show up, shut up, and toss water. At some point, someone hands you a cloth to tie over your mouth. "Filter the smoke," they bark. You hold back a snort. This is no N95. It's a rag that smells faintly of pickled onions and failure. Still, it's better than breathing burning rope fumes raw. Then the wind changes. In an instant, the flames leap sideways like they're alive. People scream. A horse rears. The bucket line breaks. You stagger backward as heat claws at your face. This is the moment you realize you're in real danger. You duck behind a wagon as flaming debris rains down. Sparks hiss into puddles. Shingles fall like fire-flavored confetti. You cover your head, heart slamming against your ribs. For one awful second, you think this is it, that you'll become a charred unidentified in some 1700s parish record. But the wind shifts again, and the fire stumbles. Bucket's resume. Some hero has hacked a hole in the burning wall, letting steam explode outward like a dragon's exhale. The fire coughs, retreats. You stay frozen until a hand yanks you upright. It's the girl from earlier. She's got ash streaks on her cheeks and no time for weakness. "Come on," she says. "Help break the barrels." You limp after her. Breaking the barrels means rolling heavy casks of fish oil away from the flames before they become bombs. And yes, fish oil is very flammable. You and 3 others push a barrel the size of your bathtub down a side alley, wheezing and praying it doesn't crack open and soak you in flaming cod fat. Finally, hours later, or maybe just one incredibly long, smoke-choked blur, the flames die. The warehouse is gone. 2 homes are scorched. A dock is blackened and steaming. But Boston still stands. You slump on the curb, covered in grime and guilt. Did you help? Probably. Did you almost perish? Definitely. Are your hands ruined? Completely. Someone hands you a flask. You don't ask what's in it. You sip. It burns. Possibly gin. possibly turpentine. You don't care. Historians still argue whether Boston's early fire policies were ahead of their time or dangerously inadequate. They had fire wardens, bucket brigades, and neighborhood drills, but no centralized leadership. Fires still regularly devoured entire blocks until stricter building codes and organized companies came along decades later. A man nearby mutters, "Lucky it didn't spread." Another replies, "Should hang the sailor who left his lamp burning." You look around at the exhausted crowd. There's no applause, no fanfare, just people catching breath, coughing, wiping soot from their brows, and trudging back to unfinished chores. You stand up and immediately regret it. Your knees crack like old floorboards. Your arms throb. Your eyebrows may never recover. Somewhere, a bell rings. Not a fire alarm this time, but a church. Evening. Time for prayer. Time for curfews. Time for closing shutters and counting what you almost lost. You wander down the main road, dazed. Thatched roofs sag. Windows glow orange with candlelight. People whisper on doorsteps. One man is sweeping ashes from his porch like it's just another Monday. A boy runs past, holding a bucket bigger than his torso. He grins at you. First fire. You nod. Not bad. You didn't even throw up. You're too tired to laugh. But the boy's right. You didn't throw up. You didn't pass out. You didn't combust. You survived your first Colonial fire. You are, however, done for the day. Bone deep, world-weary, can-barely-think kind of done. You limp toward an alleyway that looks semi-sheltered. Curl up behind some barrels. The wood is still warm from the day's sun. Or maybe from the fire. Either way, you close your eyes. Somewhere far off, a rooster crows. Is confused. Or haunted. Maybe both. Either way, you're already drifting. You wake up shivering. The barrels did not keep their warmth. They have betrayed you. Your hoodie is damp. Your socks are soggy. Your back feels like it fought a small bear and lost. And now there's a rat on your leg. You yelp and it scurries off, scandalized. Welcome to another morning in Colonial Boston. There's no breakfast buffet, no room service, and definitely no gentle sunrise playlist. Just the clatter of hooves, the clanging of bells, and the sour smell of yesterday's smoke still hanging in the air like a bad decision. Your stomach groans like a ship in a storm. Time to find food. But first, let's get one thing clear. You don't have money. Not the right kind, anyway. And bartering requires something valuable, which, unless someone suddenly declares semi-functional sneakers a form of currency, you're out of luck. You trudge back into the main thoroughfare, where Boston is already awake and 3 steps ahead of you. People are hawking goods on corners. Bread, butter, eggs, even fresh oysters that look like they've never known a refrigerator. A fishmonger slaps a flounder on his stall so hard it makes a splat that echoes down the street. You eye a tray of hand pies and drift closer, hopeful. The woman selling them notices. "You paying?" she asks. "Not at the moment." Then keep moving, drifter. Colonial hospitality is warm like a slap. And here's our mainstream historical fact. Money in early Boston is a mess. There's British currency, colonial bills of credit, Spanish pieces of 8, and coins clipped so many times they're basically metallic question marks. Barter is common, credit even more so, but only if people know and trust you. You, my friend, are a stranger with soot in your hair and a hoodie no one understands. So you beg, lightly. You offer to carry baskets, sweep stoops, chase off geese. One old woman finally takes pity and gives you a heel of cornbread for scrubbing her front step. It's dry, it's gritty, tastes like humility. Still chewing, you wander toward a commotion near the public green. People are gathering, some cheering, others grimacing. You hear it before you see it, the rhythmic clack of wood against flesh. And then you spot it, the pillory. A man is locked into the wooden frame, head and hands trapped. His face is red. His wig is crooked. Children are throwing spoiled cabbage. You wince. Tax dodger. Someone mutters beside you. And a loudmouth. Public shaming is entertainment here. Colonial Boston doesn't have Netflix. It has stocks, whipping posts, and gossip. People gather like it's open mic night at the town square, except the mic is a stick and the jokes are vegetables. You watch as another man is marched up, this one younger, eyes defiant. The constable announces, "Caught at the South Market, thieving bread." There's a pause. You shift uncomfortably. Then someone in the crowd yells, "Feed him before you hang him." And a ripple of uncomfortable laughter moves through the bystanders. The thief is lashed 3 times, quick, efficient, and released. He limps away, blood soaking the back of his shirt. You take a step back. This world does not do nuance. A quirky tidbit for you, in 1700s Boston, there's no real prison system the way we think of it now. Minor crimes get public punishment. Major ones get execution. Debtors may rot in jails. But everyone else is handled with speedy, humiliating efficiency. Justice is loud, visible, and intentionally uncomfortable. Suddenly, you hear a different sound. Singing. You follow it past the stocks and the dispersing crowd to a small wooden building with open windows and a scent of herbs wafting through the door. Inside, a woman crushes something with a mortar and pestle, humming under her breath. A healer. She glances at your face. Ash-smudged, pale, probably haunted, and nods once. "You've been breathing smoke," she says. "Sit." You obey. She hands you a small cloth soaked in something minty and sharp. You press it to your face. It burns. It also helps. You ask what she's making. Poultice for burns. Chickweed, lard, a touch of honey. She pauses, then adds, "And spider webs." You blink. "I'm sorry, spider webs?" She smiles. "They stop the bleeding." Old wives' trick. You lean back, trying not to picture arachnids in your first aid kit. Historians still argue whether these women, often called healers or herb wives, were respected caregivers or constantly on the brink of being accused of witchcraft. Some kept journals of remedies, others passed recipes orally. Either way, if you were sick in Boston, these were the people you went to before doctors, who were expensive and often not helpful. She gives you a small cup of bitter tea, yarrow and sassafras for the lungs, and shoos you out when your cup is empty. Try not to breathe more fire. You shuffle back into the sun, a little clearer, a little queasier. And that's when you notice a boy, maybe 8 years old, curled in the doorway of a shuttered shop. His clothes are rags. His face is hollow. He watches you with the look of someone who's seen the bottom of hope. You give him your last crumb of cornbread. He says nothing, just eats like it's the first real thing in days. That's Boston too. Hard edges, sharper hearts. People don't smile easily here, but when they do, it feels earned. You walk again, slower now. The market is still buzzing. There's a man selling tooth powders, next to a woman offering Indian cures. A barber surgeon sharpens his razors, then holds up a tooth he's just pulled from a pale, sweaty man. He waves it like a prize fish. You clutch your own jaw protectively. By mid-afternoon, the sun is high and the city smells like salt, yeast, and horse. You're sunburned, dehydrated, and learning a new definition of the word, scraping by. And then, salvation. A group of boys playing stickball in an alley. The bat is a warped plank, the ball a stitched-up scrap of leather. You watch for a while, then edge closer. "Wanna play?" One of them calls. You're not sure if it's a trap, but you nod. They let you bat. You miss, then miss again, then connect barely, and the ball pings off a post. They cheer, and for one shining moment, you're just a kid again. A weirdly dressed, soot-streaked, time-displaced kid, but a kid nonetheless. Game ends with someone's window breaking. Everyone scatters. You don't run. You limp away, aching but smiling. And as the sky begins to bleed pink and gold over the crooked rooftops, you realize you're not just surviving anymore. You're learning how to read people, how to navigate the barter system, how to breathe without coughing up ash, how to spot bread that won't betray you, even how to dodge a cabbage mid-flight. It's not comfort, but it's something. Resilience, maybe. You sit on a stoop and watch the town settle. Candle flames flicker in windows. The smell of soup drifts from chimneys. Somewhere, a fiddle starts to play. You don't belong here, but you're still here. And in Boston, that counts. You wake up to the sound of church bells. Not gentle chimes. Not the whimsical jingle of an ice cream truck. These are serious, staccato clangs, like someone's trying to hammer heaven's front door off its hinges. You bolt upright, brain fogged and bones grumbling. Sunday, the day of rest. Only no one in Colonial Boston seems to understand what rest means. You rub your eyes and realize you're not behind the same barrels. You've wandered. Somehow, during the night, you crawled into a narrow alley behind a tavern where you fell asleep against a stack of musty grain sacks. At least one has exploded in the night. You are now partially bred. As you shake the flour off your hoodie, two women in fine, stiff dresses hustle past, eyes forward, hair tucked tightly under bonnets. No makeup, no frills. Their expressions say, "God is watching, and you'd better believe he is." Colonial Boston takes Sunday seriously, Puritan level seriously. No work, no play, no idleness, no laughter above a whisper. If you so much as look like you're enjoying yourself, someone will judge you, possibly fine you, possibly rat you out to the selectmen. You follow the crowd like a leaf in a stream, shuffling toward a towering wooden meeting house in the center of town. It's not a church, technically. It's a meeting house. But don't let the bland name fool you. This is where the Puritan grip tightens. And it's mandatory. Let's make that clear. You're legally obligated to attend Sunday service. If you're found lounging around in your hut, snoozing in a tavern, or gasp, fishing, someone will report you, and you'll get a stern talking to by the constable, or worse, a fine. It's like attendance for eternal salvation is being monitored. Inside the meeting house, the benches are bare wood and about as comfortable as a bag of nails. You squeeze into a back corner, surrounded by townsfolk with straight backs and stricter gazes. There's no stained glass, no cushioned pews, just wood. Lots and lots of judgmental wood. The minister climbs into the pulpit, which is perched unervingly high, like he's addressing you from the crow's nest of a ship. He opens his Bible, clears his throat, and begins, and does not stop. For hours. The sermon is not light fare. There's no love your neighbor or here's how to be kind. No, this is Old Testament thunder. Fire, brimstone, original sin, and the very real chance that you specifically are doomed. The minister sounds like he's yelling directly at your hoodie. You try to stay awake. You fail. You drift off during a particularly long monologue about the wrath of God and awaken with a start as the entire congregation stands. You're half a beat late and a full beat confused. Someone beside you leans in and whispers, Psalm 39. You mumble something in response that might have been 30 fine and pretend to sing. You don't know the words. You barely know what day it is. But your neighbors are singing with such solemn intensity. You feel guilty for not feeling guilty enough. Here's a mainstream historical fact to chew on. The typical Sunday service in Colonial Boston could last 5 to 7 hours. That's with a short intermission. Children were expected to sit still the whole time. If they didn't, they might be poked by the tithingman, a church official armed with a long stick for whacking inattentive kids and adults. You don't see him right away, but you feel him. Suddenly, a small boy 2 rows ahead of you leans too far and bonks his sister. Thwop. There it is. The tithingman delivers a precision tap with his stick, like a trained monk of discipline. You sit straighter. This might be a good time to mention the Sabbath laws. Known as blue laws, they prohibited everything from cooking to unnecessary walking. Even kissing your spouse in public could earn a scolding. These laws weren't just social norms, they were enforceable and fines could stack up fast. And here comes the quirky tidbit. During the 1700s, some devout Bostonians were so obsessed with Sabbath purity that they prepared all food the day before and set it in special Sabbath ovens. Slow-heating stone containers buried in embers so they could technically serve hot food without violating God's chill day. That's how serious this was. Hot stew was okay, as long as you didn't light the fire that morning. Back in the meeting house, the sermon turns to witchcraft. You freeze. The minister warns of devilish influence, of those who spread sin under the guise of kindness. He speaks of temptation, of neighbors who seem too clever, too solitary, or too unbothered by suffering. You suddenly feel very aware of your modern clothes. A few people glance your way. You smile weakly. Historians still argue whether the Puritan obsession with witchcraft reflected legitimate social fears or a way to control women, outsiders, and the eccentric. Either way, the echoes of Salem are still fresh. You're in a town where unusual behavior is not just frowned upon, it's feared. And let's face it, you're basically a walking heresy. When the service finally ends, you stand and stretch, pretending you haven't lost all feeling in your lower spine. You follow the others outside, blinking in the bright, judgmental daylight. No one talks. The silence is eerie. Children whisper. Adults nod once, sharply, and drift off to their homes. You're still hungry, still broke, still not legally part of this town. And now it's Sunday, which means nothing is open. No taverns, no markets, not even the fishmonger. So you do what everyone else does, you walk. Slowly, silently, thinking deep, godly thoughts, or pretending to. You end up near the common again, where families sit on porches or walk in pairs. A dog barks once, then looks embarrassed. Even the animals seem subdued. You're half tempted to go back to the healer's house just for the smell of something not judgmental. But instead, you find a quiet patch of grass and lie down. The sky is brilliantly blue. Birds chirp softly, and for a second, it almost feels peaceful. Then a voice behind you mutters, "Idle hands make the devil's work." You sit up, fast. A man with a long coat and a longer face nods at you, then walks on. Apparently, resting on the Sabbath is fine, as long as it looks a little more serious. So you sit with a frown, as if pondering eternal questions. Really, you're wondering if you could sneak a snack without divine smiting. Eventually, as the sun tilts westward, the town loosens a bit. Children start to laugh again. A few dogs chase each other without looking apologetic. Somewhere, someone plays a cautious fiddle. You head back to the tavern alley for sleep, more from habit than comfort. And as you curl up again beside your betrayed grain sack, you reflect. You've survived your first Sunday in Puritan Boston. You didn't snore during the sermon. You weren't poked by the tithingman. You weren't accused of witchcraft. It's not victory, but it's close. Your back pops like kindling as you stretch awake on the tavern's stone stoop. Another day, another layer of grime baked into your hoodie. Your teeth feel mossy. Your knees are made of wood. And your stomach is throwing a small operatic tantrum. You've passed the point of hangry. You're now spiritually hungry. You could eat a tree. But Boston has a different plan for you this morning. Shouting. You hear it down the street. Sharp, rhythmic, practiced. Not angry, not joyful, just official. You stumble toward the sound and find them. Redcoats. A line of British soldiers, fresh out of the barracks, marching through the city like it belongs to them. Their boots slap the cobblestones. Their coats gleam. Their muskets gleam harder. And their expressions say, "Don't even think about it." One peels off from the group to inspect something at a corner stall, and for just a second the crowd tenses, then exhales when he walks away. Welcome to the occupation. Here's your mainstream historical fact. By the late 1760s, especially after the imposition of the Townshend Acts, Boston had become one of the most heavily garrisoned towns in the colonies. British troops were stationed here not to defend the city from foreign invaders, but to enforce British law on Bostonians. That went over about as well as tea at a coffee convention. You glance at the local Bostonians near you. They watch the soldiers with what could only be described as weaponized eye rolls. These people are not thrilled about sharing sidewalk space with redcoats. And you look like a confused, disheveled civilian who doesn't belong to either team. That's dangerous. You back away slowly. Later that morning, the political tension simmers louder. You overhear two men arguing outside a printing shop. It's taxation without representation, and you'll end up tarred like Sam if you keep squawking about it. You duck into a side street. Tarred? Yes. Tarring and feathering, possibly the worst version of Colonial Yelp reviews. Here's a quirky tidbit for you. Although it wasn't as common as movies make it seem, tarring and feathering was real and painful. Hot pine tar was dumped on someone, then covered with feathers. It was meant to humiliate more than kill, but burns, infections, and hypothermia often followed. Boston mobs were not subtle. Back on the main street, someone hands you a pamphlet. It's thin, inky, and very angry. It says things like liberty and tyranny and resistance. You nod like you understand, but mostly you're trying to work out how to eat it. This is where the scholarly debates kick in. Historians still argue whether the rising rebellion in Boston was a widespread people's movement or driven mostly by an elite few with loud voices and printing presses. What's clear is that tension is building like a storm, and you're standing in the middle of the pressure system in damp socks. You make your way toward the harbor, hoping that salt air will clear your head and maybe, there'll be a fish stand that opens early. Instead, you find a customs officer shouting at a dock worker, something about smuggling. A crowd forms quickly. Some cheer, some jeer. One throws an oyster. You don't stick around to see where that escalates. At this point, you're asking yourself, is anyone happy in Colonial Boston? Actually, yes, kind of. You pass a group of apprentices hauling buckets and shouting jokes. They're filthy and overworked, but also loud and alive. One tosses you an apple, slightly bruised but edible, and nods like he's just knighted you. You bow slightly in thanks and bite into the apple like it's a 5-star meal. Then you hear music. Not fiddle music, not pious hymns. Drumming. And drums in this city mean militia. You follow the sound up a hill toward the common again. There they are, Bostonians drilling, practicing formation, handling wooden muskets with the enthusiasm of people who really don't want to be ruled anymore. A local militia. They're not professionals like the redcoats. They're farmers, butchers, teachers, maybe that guy who threw the oyster. But their eyes are flint and their rhythm is tight. Someone gestures for you to pick up a wooden musket. You do. It's heavier than you thought. The stock is rough. There's no trigger mechanism, just a vague idea of what a gun should be. But you line up in formation, shoulder to shoulder with rebels in training. And when the signal is given, you lurch forward with the rest, jabbing the wood toward an imaginary enemy. It's clumsy. It's strange. It's thrilling. Of course, then your hoodie sleeve gets caught on your musket, and you nearly faceplant into the mud. Your training career ends before it begins. Still, they laugh. You laugh. You're not part of them, but you're not apart from them either. And that, in Boston, is dangerous ground. By mid-afternoon, the city feels coiled. Conversations are whispered. Doors creak open and slam shut like punctuation marks. Even the taverns buzz with something more than beer. Talk of British taxes, liberty trees, and tea. Always the tea. Someone at a corner tavern waves a hand at you. You with the Suns? You shrug. He narrows his eyes. You don't know the Suns? You play it cool. Refresh me. He leans closer. Sons of Liberty. Patriots. Revolution's heart. You either march with them, or you get trampled. You nod solemnly, then duck into the crowd and disappear like a very nervous ghost. That night, you sit on the edge of the wharf and watch the moon slice across the water. Boston is not the city of freedom it brags to be, not yet. It's noisy, angry, divided, proud. It's beautiful in the way a storm cloud is beautiful, charged, dangerous, electric. You think about the redcoats, the ministers, the tar barrels, the hidden printing presses, the boys with wooden muskets, the people whispering in corners. Boston is a city caught mid-transformation. It's a boiling pot. Some say of liberty, others say of arrogance. But one thing is certain. It's reaching a point of no return. And you're a hoodie-wearing ghost drifting between factions, waiting for the flashpoint. You don't know it yet, but the fuse is lit. The fuse lights in the dark. First, it's a whisper. Then it's a scrape, a boot against cobblestone. Then another. You're asleep, sort of, against a crate near the wharf again, but the city is stirring before dawn like a living thing. You blink awake as shadows gather. They're not British soldiers. These are townspeople. Dozens. Maybe more. Hoods up, hats low, coats pulled tight. They move like a tide toward the harbor, silent but swelling with purpose. You follow them. Of course you do. You have no idea what's happening. only that the air is thick with something flammable. Not literally, thank goodness, you've seen enough tar talk for 1 century, but metaphorically? Oh yes, something's about to blow. You drift through the crowd until the crates come into view. Tea. So much tea. Stacked along Griffin's Wharf like the world's most British monument. Crates bearing the seal of the East India Company are being watched by British guards and colonial dockhands alike. There's shouting now, some from above deck, some from the growing crowd. And then, like a switch flips, chaos. Men disguised as Mohawk warriors rush the ship. Axes appear, crates shatter, and the Boston Tea Party begins. Mainstream historical fact. On the night of December 16, 1773, members of the Sons of Liberty, frustrated by British taxation and monopoly control over colonial trade, boarded ships in Boston Harbor and dumped 342 chests of tea into the water. That's over 90,000 pounds of tea, valued at more than $1 million today. And you're there. Not that you're participating. No one hands you an axe. You're still the confused drifter in a hoodie, but you're watching history crash into itself. Barrel after barrel smashing open. Tea staining the black water like ink spilled in protest. People cheer. Others chant. And still, no British soldiers interrupt. Maybe they've been ordered to hold back. Maybe they're caught off guard. Maybe they simply don't want to deal with this many colonists in one very angry place. You crouch behind a barrel, more observer than rebel, but your heart beats like you just threw a crate yourself. This is no longer just tension. This is action. Quirky tidbit? Here's one you won't find in every textbook. Some of the men that night tried to wipe their feet clean before leaving the ships, because they didn't want to steal even a leaf of tea. Colonial rebellion came with oddly strict personal ethics. The next morning, Boston buzzes like a kicked beehive. The harbor smells like a very damp tea shop. British officials are furious. Loyalists are outraged. And the rebel faction? Triumphant but nervous. There's no way London lets this go unpunished. And they don't. Within days, the reaction arrives not in troops but in paper. The coercive acts, what colonists will call the intolerable acts, begin rolling in. Boston's port is closed, town meetings are restricted, and British officials are shielded from colonial courts. The screws tighten. The punishment isn't just harsh, it's strategic. The port closure strangles Boston's economy. Ships sit idle. Merchants go hungry. You go hungrier. Food grows scarcer. Prices rise. Even the rats seem stingier with their crumbs. Nowhere feels safe. Even the taverns, once noisy with laughter and ale, grow tense, whispery. The Sons of Liberty don't disappear, but they go underground. Literally, in some cases, you hear talk of hidden meetings in cellars, candlelit councils behind closed doors. You're not invited. You are, however, present at the first murmurs of a new idea. A continental idea. Historians still argue whether the First Continental Congress, formed in response to these crackdowns, was a natural evolution of colonial politics or a desperate gamble. Either way, delegates begin arriving in Philadelphia from all over the colonies. Boston's fire is spreading, and suddenly this isn't just a local quarrel. It's a movement. One night, you find yourself warming your hands at a fire outside a print shop. Inside, a young man with ink-stained sleeves and an exhausted stare hands a fresh flyer to a waiting courier. The headline reads, "The cause of liberty must not sleep." He doesn't even notice you watching. You realize something then. You've been drifting through this world, dodging sermons, ducking militia drills, hiding from redcoats. But the people around you, they've been building something. Slowly, stubbornly, through hunger and humiliation. Something is waking up, and it's bigger than Boston. One early morning, you hear music. Not the kind from church. Something sharper, faster. A fife, and drums. You run toward it, legs sore, half-starved but pulled forward anyway. The common is filled with militia again. But this time, there's a structure to it. Rows upon rows. Muskets with bayonets now. Officers barking commands not just in drill, but in preparation. Someone tells you the British are planning something. Someone else says the colonists are planning more. You can't keep track of the rumors. All you know is that tension no longer simmers. It boils. and the lid can't hold forever. You wander back to the docks that night and sit at the edge, toes over black water still steeped faintly in tea. You don't belong here. You never did. But somehow, this ragged, furious, stubborn town feels like a heartbeat. And you're caught in the rhythm. One last note before sleep overtakes you under the stars. You hear someone mention Lexington and Concord, names that won't mean much to you now. But soon, there'll be thunder. You wake up to silence. Not the comforting kind. Not birds or wind or harbor creaks. This is silence with weight behind it. The city holds its breath. You sit up on the wharf and feel it in your bones. Something has shifted. The tea-stained waters barely lap against the shore. Even the rats seem on edge. Boston isn't bustling this morning. It's bracing. Then you hear the first ripple, feet moving fast over cobblestones, urgent voices, someone shouting in the distance. Not a fight, not a mob, not a sermon. This is something else. You catch the word, Lexington. Someone else, blood. And just like that, you are sprinting. You don't know where you're going, only that the tide has broken. That fuse from earlier, it didn't just burn, it ignited. By the time you reach the common, the city is alive with alarm. Paul Revere's name is everywhere. He rode through the night. The regulars are coming. He stopped at every house, everyone. You didn't hear them fire at Lexington? Mainstream historical fact. On April 19, 1775, British troops marched toward Lexington and Concord to seize colonial weapons and arrest rebel leaders. Local militias met them. Shots were fired. The shot heard round the world. And with it, the American Revolution exploded into open war. Boston doesn't sleep that night. You follow men rushing toward supply caches. Others load weapons. Some shout at their wives to gather the children. You hear one woman sobbing as her husband kisses her forehead and disappears into the dark. You aren't the only one stunned. The city staggers like a boxer hit clean. And this is only the beginning. By mid-morning, wounded men begin returning. The stories they carry are chaos. Regulars opened fire at Lexington Green. Colonial stood and fought at the North Bridge in Concord. Some say the British burned homes. Others say they were ambushed all the way back to Boston. Historians still argue whether the British intended to spark a battle that day or simply underestimated the fury they'd meet. Either way, the fight came, and it came hard. You hover near the edge of a crowd as someone climbs onto a wagon, blood still drying on his sleeve. "They tried to run us down," he shouts. "We pushed them back with fire in our fists." Cheers erupt. Tears too. You've never seen such a complicated mix of triumph and terror in one place. These people, these stubborn, muddy, aching colonists, stood against the British Empire and survived. But now the British are here, really here. The streets flood with redcoats. The occupation that once felt like tension and stares has shifted into siege. Boston is surrounded, blockaded by water and watched from land. The city becomes a trapped hornet's nest. Colonial militias control the countryside. The British, the Navy, the Loyalists, they cling to what's inside the walls. And you're trapped with them. Food becomes even more scarce. You can barely remember the taste of bread. The harbor stinks of salt and sweat and something sharper. Fear. No ships go out. No supplies come in. Tensions inside boil. Neighbors suspect each other. Families splinter over loyalty. You see children learning not just letters but slogans. One afternoon, you pass by a group of boys carving liberty into a fence post with a pocket knife. They ask if you want to turn. You do. You scratch the Y carefully. It's the only thing you've written in this century. The siege drags on, and then suddenly you hear cannons. You feel them in your chest before your ears catch up. Boom, boom. From across the water, from the heights beyond, from Charlestown. Faint but undeniable, colonials are digging in. Bunker Hill, or Breed's Hill, depending on who you ask. Even now, scholars debate whether the famous battle's name matches the actual hill. Doesn't really matter to the people caught in the blast radius. On June 17, 1775, Colonial militiamen held high ground outside Boston and repelled 2 British charges. Only after they ran out of ammunition did they fall back on the third. You stand on a rooftop with others watching smoke rise from across the harbor. British casualties are massive. American pride soars even in defeat. Someone whispers beside you, "We can stand toe to toe with them." Someone else mutters, "For now." You don't sleep that night. Boston is firelit, sooty, scarred, and changed. No longer a town debating revolution. Now it's the cradle of one. Quirky tidbit. Some accounts say Colonial snipers used pewter buttons as makeshift bullets at Bunker Hill. That's right, buttons. Fashion as resistance. Eat your heart out, runways. More battles will follow. More blood. Washington will arrive. New York will rise. The French will join. A declaration will be signed on a hot July day in Philadelphia. But none of that is here yet. You are still in Boston. Still barefoot. Still hungry. Still uncertain whether this was the right century to fall into. But the people around you, they're no longer uncertain. The question of whether to rebel is gone. Only one question remains. How far will they go? And how many more will fall before they get there? The answer, like the tea in the harbor, will steep for years. But for now, for tonight, Boston stands. Bruised, blockaded, boiling, but standing. And you? You curl into a pile of hay behind an abandoned stable. Hoodie pulled up, the stars above too bright to be real. You're still here, still listening, still learning, still somehow alive in a city that chews up its own future. And as your eyes finally, mercifully close, the cannon fire fades into dreams. The night settles soft now, the streets quiet, the fireflies blink over rooftops and rain barrels. The wind, once bitter, is only cool. A soft hush threading through half-open shutters and the high branches of Boston's tired trees. You lie still, finally safe from the shouting, the stomping boots, the sour breath of conflict. All around you, the city breathes slow. Not calm, no, not calm, but slower, like a tired boxer leaning against the ropes, bruised and smiling. The cobblestones remember every footstep. The tavern walls still hold echoes of secret plots and spilled cider. Even the harbor, black and bottomless, hums with memory. Crates gone, cannon fire faded, but the shape of what's coming is clear. You feel it in your chest. This place was never built for peace. But from that very tension, something world-changing will rise. For now, though, let it rest. Let the questions slip away. How you got here, why you stayed, what comes next. None of that matters in this moment. What matters is this. You walked through history with your own 2 feet. You felt the heat of revolution before it had a name. You saw Boston, 1700s Boston, raw and real and furious. And you didn't just watch. You endured. Now ease back. Sink deeper into that haystack, or your blankets, or whatever cozy cocoon you're tucked inside tonight. Let your body forget the cold, the hunger, the noise. Let your thoughts soften into sleep. And as the first stars blink quietly overhead, let the last echoes of that stormy, beautiful city drift into dreams. Quiet now. Boston will be waiting, but not until morning.